Last week, we talked about some fantastic and sadly abandoned Universal Studios projects. But there are still so many more to cover. So, hold on to your butts, and let's dive in.
Fastpass facts.
Jurassic Park Helicopter Tours. By now, you must know that we are obsessed with anything Jurassic Park related. And it is such a shame to hear about so many projects based on this franchise that were canceled.
For careful consideration, I've decided not to endorse your park. So have I.
One of these projects was the Jurassic Park Helicopter Tours. This ride would have been a dream come true to any fan of the movies. It was originally planned to be a part of the new Jurassic Park themed area in Islands of Adventure. The ride would have a tower with a helicopter on its roof, and it would have been a simulator-style flying ride that would take guests on a flying ride around Jurassic Park. When we think of simulator rides, we usually think of a closed cabin ride system, like Star Tours. But the plan for this ride was very similar to the Soarin' at Disney parks. So Helicopter Tours was going to use a suspended ride theater system. This would have created a unique and realistic experience of flying over Jurassic Park. Guests would board the helicopters, and their journey would begin. They would go around the entire park, flying over dinosaur paddocks and getting aerial views of mountains. While the guests were looking at the beautiful views, they would suddenly be attacked by pterodons. Pterodons might be very impressive creatures. Imagine seeing them coming at you through the air. That would be terrifying. It sounded like such a fun and impressive ride, and it even made it all the way to the concept art and model of the theme park when it was being presented, but unfortunately, it was dropped after that. We are still trying to bring Walt to life in animatronic form, and we need your help. We have opened up our Patreon page with new rewards so that you can help us reach the final goal and take Walt to the finish line. For just $1, you can be a part of Walt's history, so we would be so thankful if you could go check it out. Jurassic Park Jeep Safari. We've talked before about how the development of Jurassic Park the ride began even before the movie was even in production. The team in charge of creating the ride read the book and were allowed to read the movie script to get inspired and come up with some ideas for the ride. And the first concept that came to mind was to recreate the famous adrenaline-filled scene in the movie where the characters are being chased by a T-Rex, or Rexy as many of us know her. But of course, at the time, it would have been impossible to create a sequence where the T-Rex would be able to chase the Jeep or tear through trees and jungles. So the attraction was shelved, and Jurassic Park, the ride, was created instead. A few years later, when Islands of Adventure was being planned, Universal decided that having a Jurassic Park land in the park was a must, and they began looking for attractions to create for this area. Of course, Jurassic Park River Adventure would be one, and there was an attraction that had been kind of developed but had never come to life, the Jurassic Park Jeep Safari. The ride vehicles were based on the Electric Explorer tour vehicles from the movie. The ride would take guests to a tour outdoors and also indoors. After boarding the vehicle, guests would enter through the famed Jurassic Park gate, and then immediately drive below a giant Brachiosaurus. More and more dinosaurs would be seen appearing from their lagoons during this time. Soon after, a dinosaur would block the path forward, forcing passengers to back up the Jeep, unknowingly into a Velociraptor den. This would have been the indoor section of the ride. Things would have got really interesting here. This is when raptors would start climbing onto the vehicle. In order to not become raptor food, guests would somehow escape the enclosure, only to come face to face with the T-Rex. The T-Rex would have stepped on the roof and spun it, just like in the movie. This would have been indeed a great adrenaline-filled experience for fans of the film, but sadly, this attraction never came to life. The reason? It was just too similar to Jurassic Park's River Adventure. And we can honestly see that. But also, we would have loved to experience it. Had the ride been built, it would have been located behind the Thunder Falls Terraced restaurant, but eventually, Skull Island Reign of Kong was built on this plot of land. Raptor Racers. Raptor Racers was yet another project that was planned for the Jurassic Park themed area in Islands of Adventure. The concept was designed in 2001, a few years after the park had already been open. The idea was to add a few more thrilling rides for guests in this area. And Raptor Racers would have delivered too. Designed by the Coaster Works, it was supposed to have been a wooden roller coaster. The theme was to have guests be chased by a bunch of velociraptors. They would have to escape from the claws of these hungry raptors. This coaster was partly inspired by the famous Cyclone coaster in Long Beach, and was going to have a track in the shape of a dinosaur skeleton. Pretty cool, right? All of the coaster trains were going to be painted to look like the tour vehicles and Jeep Wranglers from the Jurassic Park movies. The story goes like this. Passengers get into the coasters and are chased by hungry raptors. They race to outrun them, and towards the end of the ride, they enter a dark area. Here, the coasters start shaking to simulate danger. But luckily, the passengers live to see another day. They come out only to see scary claw marks on the vehicles. This effect was one of the most interesting parts of this ride. The claw marks and damages to the coaster train would be revealed by shining a UV light on them, so the passengers could see just how close they had come to becoming the raptors' next meal. Even though this ride was never built, the concept and the story of the ride were kind of recycled, and it became the Velocicoaster. This ride opened on April 30th, 2021, and is the fastest launch coaster at any Universal park. It features 2 high-speed launches, a thrilling 155-foot fall, and 4 inversions. And, of course, it has velociraptors. With all of these combined, you are definitely going to get your dose of thrill and more. Jurassic Park Flying Coaster. Flying roller coasters are incredible. They literally make you feel like you are flying, and this sensation combined with the thrills of a roller coaster makes these types of coasters amazing. So Universal thought that having a Jurassic Park themed flying coaster would be a terrific idea. This coaster would have given guests a very adventurous ride in the air. This was going to be a Bolliger and Mabillard flying coaster, similar to Manta at SeaWorld Orlando. The ride would have been set in a huge aviary with lots of pterodons and pterodactyls. No doubt, this would have resulted in getting up close and personal with the creatures several times. Imagine the animatronics that we could have seen. This attraction would have been a huge success if it had been constructed, because Bolliger and Mabillard's track record in regards to flying coasters is impeccable. They've created some of the best coasters out there. They have long tracks, lots of air times, and even huge drops. But in the end, this attraction was canceled. The bad news is that we are unlikely to see some variation of this coaster at Universal's Islands of Adventure, since the Velocicoaster already exists. But the good news is that a similar ride exists at the Universal Studios in Japan. Known as the Flying Dinosaur, this ride is a steel flying coaster designed by, you guessed it, Bolliger and Mabillard. It is currently the second longest flying coaster in the world. It has 2 massive inversions and a 124 feet drop, one of the farthest initial drops ever. The story is that passengers are seized by a pterodon that has gone out of control. This beast throws passengers into the sky, making them soar above the ground for a total of 3 minutes. You get to swing 360 degrees through the world of Jurassic Park. You definitely don't want to miss this one. The Grinch Mount Crumpet Roller Coaster. The Seuss Landing area in Islands of Adventure is such a beautiful area of the park. It has several rides and attractions built after the characters in Dr. Seuss's books. These include the Cat in a Hat, the High in the Sky Seuss Trolley Train Ride, If I Ran the Zoo, and One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish, among many others. But one notable and fan favorite character is missing. This character, of course, is the Grinch.
The Grinch!
Universal Orlando decided to make this right and planned to build a family coaster based on Dr. Seuss's favorite character. This coaster was supposed to be based on his sleigh ride down Mount Crumpet, as shown in the books. The attraction was, aptly named, the Grinch's Sleigh Ride. The idea was that a Matterhorn-style mountain would tower over the area of Seuss Landing. This would obviously be Mount Crumpet, and would house the roller coaster. Rumor has it that the area in which the coaster was going to be built was supposed to be themed around a winter village. It would have other winter-themed claymation attractions as well, but the roller coaster would have been the main attraction. Based on the name, the cars would have most probably been in the shape of sleighs. Since it would have been a family-friendly coaster, the coaster would most likely have been very mild, with smooth turns and no sharp drops. This would have been a fantastic ride for all us Grinch fans, but Universal decided that the seasonal nature of the character did not fit in with the park. I mean, riding a sleigh in a Christmas-themed winter village might have been a little weird during the summers, so the ride was never built. But between 2000 to 2004, Universal did make a Grinchmas-themed slide called the Mount Crumpet Snow Plummet. This was an actual ice slide that was 60 feet long. There was also a Grinch meet and greet. Unfortunately, this ride was also short-lived. However, rumor has it that we may get to see the original roller coaster after all. There are still empty areas in Seuss Landing, so stay tuned. Dr. Seuss's Noisarium. Another Dr. Seuss-inspired attraction. Designed by Akana and Associates, the Noisarium was another Dr. Seuss-themed attraction and formed a part of the original plans for Seuss Landing and Islands of Adventure. The concept was to create an experience about Dr. Seuss and noise.
Noise, 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 noise.
It was supposed to be a fun and interactive area, a musical playground of sorts for the visitors. It would have been a host of different musical exhibits, and guests could play their own music here or simply join in with the orchestra of sound. The main idea behind the Noisarium was that it was going to be an after show for the Cat in the Hat ride. It would be the landing pad for the ride. Guests would get down, walk along the forest path, and get to the central plaza where the Noisarium would be hosted. Here, there would be huge instruments that would bring Dr. Seuss's stories to life with their music. There were many amazing instruments planned. There was the waterfall, a room with many windows open to falling water, where the water would make music by splashing against various musical objects. There was the bell tower with hand pedals that could be maneuvered by the guests. There was also the two ears room, with ears of many different shapes and sizes. Each one would have made a different sound. It would have been a true jam session. It is unfortunate that it was never built, and sadly, we will never be able to experience it. Which one of these attractions would you like to be able to experience? Would you like a part 3 of this series? Let us know in the comments.